Hello and welcome to the Overlap Rugby Podcast. This is episode number 27. Woo! Big number. So we've been going for quite some time. It's a pleasure as always. It's been a few weeks again.
Couple of weeks.
Was it only a couple? Okay, a couple of weeks. It's taken us a while before, and we had a few chances to maybe do a quick one, but didn't fancy doing that. We have a lot to kind of get into, and it's an absolute joy to be back, I guess, on the air. There's so much class rugby that happened over the last few weeks as well, so we've kind of been giddy and desperate to try and get a chance to do this, and we've just been buzzing amongst each other. So I was going like, there's so much to talk about, both good and bad. So we have some news later in the show, but we're gonna start the podcast by talking about the big one, which was Australia beating New Zealand.
Yeah, this was a while ago now. Obviously,
it was a while ago. We're a little out of date. But it's
late to the party.
Indeed, considering the Aussies have played the Babas since and played a thrilling encounter with them. That was great fun. Good little advertisement for rugby as well. A few fun moments. But,
for sure, yeah.
But Bledisloe 3 really did live up to the hype and kind of galvanised, for me anyway, just Bledisloe as the entity that it is for this year anyway, because it was certainly kind of feeling a bit stagnant in the wake of all black supremacy mostly.
Yeah.
But I'm just super impressed with this Australia team, this particular campaign as well, because if you look back at some of our older podcasts, certainly we were a bit disparaging, not even disparaging, but just concerned for the well-being and the health of Aussie rugby, and then a few things like the Western Force being dismantled didn't help our attitude to it, and just a super rugby overall they're showing.
I think the whole world was pretty much on that page. Yeah. I mean, it was like the union seemed to be in flames about halfway through the year, and I really do think that not everything has been salvaged by this, but what they do have, what's very clear that they have, is a very good team.
They do.
A lot of talent and a very, very accomplished coaching ticket.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the philosophy of what Czech is doing, it's just like to get a bunch of guys who are really just looking very passive, and they always had a high skill set, but they were often very, very difficult to control and to just maintain focus. As a team. They would give away soft tries, and what Czech has done is just created this really, really high work rate sort of mentality. They just are extremely disciplined in everything that they do, right down to the restarts. They're chasing back. Their
restarts were excellent this tournament as well.
There's focus from everybody. Everybody's sprinting. Everybody's getting there. Their defensive line is really disciplined. There's always a good rush to it. There's always a good plan. And very simple things like the shape of their attack. There's nothing magic about the shape of their attack, but the clean-outs are efficient, they're perfect, they're technically superb. Genny is always there in a flash, and everybody's always there. If they're going around the corner, there's people there. They're never waiting. There's nobody's taking a breath. Nobody on the field is hiding. So it's just this ethos of work rate that Czech has fostered, and then like a culture of just excellence, just not making mistakes constantly. Everybody's getting up, everyone's getting in position, everyone's looking for the ball, and people are just excited to play for him. It seems to me like he's just galvanised the team around very simple things and doing them right. And the team have just embraced it. They've worked on the scrum, they've worked on the line out, they've worked at the breakdowns,
they've worked on exits, worked on kickoffs.
All of these little things, and they're doing them all right, and it paid off. It paid off against the All Blacks. They played very, very well.
They did.
It's no mean feat, as everyone knows, beating the All Blacks, and they did thoroughly.
They can take that one to the bank, because they played it. It was similar as well. We were making that point. Like, they played with more ambition with ball in hand than the All Blacks did that day, and they got their just rewards, because they
in wet conditions.
This is it. There's still some question marks over just the All Blacks. You always say that they back their skill set because they do in their style of play, but it seems like certainly this year, once the weather turns, they've seemed to have this grim acceptance. They just shift focus entirely and play a lot off the line, a lot around the corner, and just they kick the ball as well, and just get very narrow.
There's no question that the All Blacks have problems. This is the thing about the All Blacks, especially in recent times, and it has been true in the past. I mean, you look back at 2005 through 2007, it's always been the case with the All Blacks that they look like this unstoppable machine until they don't. And this is a team that really has pushed its luck. They pushed their luck in Johannesburg, not Johannesburg, even in Cape Town. They pushed their luck in Cape Town. They pushed their luck in was it Dunedin when they played Australia?
Yes, it was under the roof.
It was under the roof.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, they pushed their luck in that game as well. And you know, as much as you admire the clutch of finding the winning try, if you put yourself in that situation often enough, eventually you're going to lose. A lot of your instinct is to give credit to Australia, and Australia were great, and certainly in all of the rugby exchanges, Australia were doing really, really well. Their carrying was ferocious. It was like you had Shona McMahon and Jack Dempsey, those guys looking like real superstars, looking like your Sia Khaleesi's, looking like your Sean O'Brien's, just rampaging through the tackle and causing All Blacks to miss tackles. They were played into the game. They were given a lot of chances with ball in hand, but they were exceptional when given the opportunity to do it, and they found some really class tries, which is always a nice thing to see. As far as the All Blacks are concerned, you're right. They have a problem when it comes to the wet. It's the second time this season that they've essentially declared for the match. They've sort of declared that the conditions are more or less unplayable for ball in hand attacking rugby,
and then they just switch philosophy entirely.
Switch philosophy, play territory, play up front, play within themselves, try and outmuscle the opposition. And for the second time in a row, they did this in the second test in the Lions. For the second time in a row, their opponents proved to them that the conditions weren't unplayable. Playing in those conditions, by finding tries in those conditions. That's what the Wallabies did. They played a lot more rugby than the All Blacks, and
I also just don't think, like, the All Blacks are supreme in the pack at the moment, and like it was I think it was Hansen making the comment in during the Lions tour that he was like, he's always amused when teams come down here thinking that they're gonna we'll bully them up front, and that's where we'll get the head thing, because you're looking at the pack going like the All Black pack going no, and as soon as you mention that, it's like no. But one caveat to attach to that, which I think we have mentioned before on the podcast, is once you remove Brodie Retallick from that equation, they are significantly weakened in the row. And it's obviously the case because he's such an exceptional super athlete. But the depth that's there, like Scott Barrett comes in, he's very physical as well, but he doesn't quite have the nous. He is still young. Like I don't think he commits his body all that intelligently sometimes, and he can be guilty of a few frustration-born penalties. And it becomes, especially when they decide that they're not going to back their skill set and do what makes them so exceptional in finding those tries out wide and just being accurate and ruthless with ball in hand and quick too. If you trying to like devolve the match into this arm wrestle and you're shorn of your Brodie Retallick in the pack, it's not the most intelligent way to go about winning the game. No. For them, it's not like there's criticism we level at all teams when we were leveling a lot at South Africa as well. It's like, know what your weapons are, know how you're going to win the game. You know, what are your winning conditions? And it seems like once the rain comes down, this All Blacks team just changes a lot. Now it's not to say, like, I don't know, I feel it's just a little bit of born of conservatism, maybe a little bit of cockiness in the pack as well, but it's like you can't necessarily factor in just how motivated Australia were and how physical they were. They had some of those certainly in the first half, some like superhuman, like you were saying, alluding to those carries where it's just unwillingness to be stopped, and then especially if your response to that is either to retaliate straight away or to kind of shrink into themselves. It felt like on the pitch a lot of them did kind of shrivel into themselves, and they got a bit reckless, and like people like Sam Cane seemed a bit flustered at times and were doing silly things and giving away a penalty or two for just cheap nonsense. Once
Dane Coles as well, Dane Coles lost the head.
He looked a different player. I'd never seen Dane Coles look that way on a pitch. He was not level-headed at all, he was like, it's not even intelligent. He was trying to, like, you can try and make it seem like it's like, oh, he's just trying to get a rise out of Australia or something, which is perhaps what he was thinking. But it was after all of those exchanges after the ball, little fracas or little push and shove things when the ball had moved on, like you could see it was Dane Coles and it was Sam Cane who were at the base of most of them. And it was like a lot of times on Kurtley Beale. I know Dane Coles hit Kurtley Beale a few times after the break, but Beale was always smiling in response, and it was like the Aussies were just smiling and going back. And like as we've said about this Checa team, super disciplined and focused, which is why like that kind of cheap tactics is just like, for them it's signs that what they're doing is working, because this is not the way this All Black team have been playing or acquitting themselves at all. And they got dragged into an arm wrestle of a game, panicked somewhat, and ended up losing to the more efficient, more clinical team, who recognised their chances, took them exceptionally well as well, and just outplayed them, outthought them, and outfought them. It was a great game.
It was a great game, and the All Blacks certainly had a lot to offer. But this is still
a game that they could very easily have won right up to the last minute. Like they did win the restart then, and they were on the attack, and it's like it's a sign of just. What do you need to do to beat this All Black team? Because they were off form. It was not the same team that we'd seen, certainly the South Africa performance when they were hockeyed them, to know like that kind of flawless performance that you see from them. They were nowhere near that, and yet they're still in the game against a team that finished second in the last World Cup, and we all know about their footballing skills and their pedigree. So it's
they're obviously bailed out by their ability to find tries for sure. But they're not unbeatable, and I think we are starting to see that now. It's 3 losses in 12 months.
Which is unprecedented for them.
It's not unprecedented, but it's new for this modern iteration. They're not really even threatening the perfect year. As much as they had the perfect rugby championship. I mean, this was certainly a year where it was laid out for them. If they could have seen off the Lions, they weren't going to play England or Ireland. So. It was a year that was laid out for them, and they were never really in it. Now they've lost twice, and while they probably will run the table going into November, there are avenues for success. There's not the other point that you didn't touch on was missing Bowden Barrett.
It's true.
So I think Cruden might be the biggest loss to this All Black team. It might be the first real dent that French rugby and that sort of club ethos has made into the All Blacks team, because they are much weaker with Sopoaga at 10, and Sopoaga looks not really there at international class, like really below Finn Russell level as a player. Like, he's not an All Black. He doesn't look it. His kicks are inaccurate. His decisions.
They're certainly very floaty.
They spend a lot of time in the air. They spend a lot of time heading down Israel Folau's throat. Another guy we didn't touch on, who was class.
I was planning on touching on him because he was immense. He was immense.
But his kicks were erratic. They were sloppy. They weren't well thought out. He never really took it to the line. And then as a whole, their attacking structure, this is something that I've thought about the All Blacks for a while. Their ability to strike is great, but their attacking structure is just a little formulaic at the moment, and certainly as far as distribution is concerned, there isn't much. So they have these centres in Sonny Bill Williams and Ryan Crotty, who are very much traditional centres, a first, an outside centre and an inside centre, as opposed to a second 5/8. And they're sort of trying to link up together, but it's very narrow. It's very much on the inside channels. And when Australia are defending with that push on the inside, it's very difficult to get through. And as far as Damien McKenzie is concerned as a distributor, like, they really aren't using him that much. Occasionally he'll slot into first receiver, but the thing that stood out to me when I was watching them attack was that Damien McKenzie, whenever he got the ball, whether it was from kick return or anything else, looked completely isolated. And it was certainly a far cry from anything that you would have seen with him at the Chiefs. He would always have someone on his shoulder. He'd always be talking to someone. And the way that the Chiefs attacked, the way that Dave Rennie had it set up, was that they were always looking for combinations, like who works well together. How can we create like patterns and dangerous combinations? Do we have two players who can read one another, who think on the same level as one another? And there isn't much of that in the All Blacks. But we did see towards the end of the game, when the game was looking like it would go away from them, was that their attack was stagnant. There was no structure. It was looking like they couldn't break through, and then all of a sudden, a worldie of an offload from Sonny Bill Williams into Rico Ioane,
which is what
who strikes and scores.
Yes, indeed.
So then it's a really interesting counterbalance of, like, we have these superstars who can make these super plays, but we don't really have the combinations. But these superstars are finding tries for us. But will we find more tries, especially with the likes of McKenzie, who really does seem to be operating on his own. As much as he's had great moments and really like grasped the jersey at key moments, like he did in Cape Town, he's very much not slotted in the sense that he doesn't really seem to have a link with anyone on the pitch. Nobody seems to be reading what he's doing. He's just trying to make plays by himself. He seems to be operating as an individual, and certainly, if he's going to be a second distributor, you can't have that. And with Sopoaga playing as he was playing, you really needed Damien McKenzie to shine.
Indeed, yeah. Or just to link and offset some of that pressure as well. Like, you need, if you're having Sopoaga at 10, you need a lot off 9, which I can see that's what they were going for as well, because they're trying to, like, part of that going narrow is to kind of just ease the pressure on your 10 a little bit. Sometimes, certainly, we know all about that with Leinster. Whenever Ross Byrne's at 10, we play off 9. Whenever Sexton's off at 10, we play off 10 more so.
Yeah.
And it's playing to your strengths, knowing what your weapons are. But part of that has to be having Mackenzie outside as a receiving option in that kind of, if you're looking at that template of, like, out half, or like pod of forwards, out half, have your fullback be the link man to the tram lines out wide, have him further back behind the thing. Yeah, there's not much of that other than kind of free roam Mackenzie getting his hands on the ball sometimes in the multi-phase by just turning up at the right place.
He was a 10 again for a bit in the second half, which was a silly place to put him, and again he still looked isolated and he still looked alone. And it's one of the problems with Sonny Bill Williams at 12 is that you do lose that option of having your 12 as a distributor. He doesn't really have a great link with any outside centres. He doesn't have a great link with 10s, so he's another guy who's just looking to make plays. And it can look glorious at times. They're such athletes and they're such superstars, but it's a concern, and it's something that they're going to have to decide on going forward. And the other big concern is that they don't actually have that much depth at 10 as far as world class 10s go. It's a bit like Ireland lose Sexton. They have nothing that comes close to Sexton, and now since Cruden's gone, they have nothing that comes close to Bowden Barrett if Bowden Barrett gets injured. And they're going to have to think about that, because Damien McKenzie's not a 10. He's not going to be your answer. Supawonga's not your answer, and then you have to look at the Richie Mo'ongas and the young guys coming up before the French clubs poach them. So they have some World Cup headaches now. This has been a learning year in a lot of ways for the All Blacks. And while I thought Steve Hansen was learning, and I was giving him loads of credit this time in the last podcast, he sort of did definitely regress in this game in terms of approaching conditions and approaching getting his players on the ball, getting his weapons on the ball, looking to play rugby, looking to outplay your opposition. There was less of that and more looking to stifle the opposition, and that had everything to do with the conditions. And it doesn't suit the All Blacks, it doesn't suit their mindset, and twice now they've lost.
The results don't seem to reflect that it's a good call on their part. You should, like, it's what we admire in the All Blacks is when they do back themselves and they play with that swagger, and it's a pale imitation when they play in the rain. Like this year, it's just they look nothing like it. It was a disappointing Lions test when they did that as well. It was just made for a game that feels like no one's in control and no one's trying to do anything, because there's still the fear of the All Blacks. Like every team who plays against them goes in with the knowledge that they're the inferior team on paper. And that's just the truth, because they're the best team in the world. So that then if the best team in the world come to the game with a plan of stifling you, and then you're recognizing this, like you get a chance to snatch the game, but it's also it kind of devolves, like it makes the contest better, but I think sometimes it can kind of leave the picture of the game just a bit more blurry, like who's actually trying to do what here, and then there's a fair few moments of confusion and then just opportunism, and it makes it more of a lottery than I think it ought to be. And it makes things a lot less clear for the All Blacks as well. Like be it on the ball or off the ball, they just seem to not be as certain of themselves.
And when you compare that to what Australia are doing, like, there's a formula to everything. There's a clarity of focus and like a specificity and that kind of do your job mentality going through the team. But they have players like Beale and Folau and
game breakers,
the superstar wingers and
Hooper as well, who made some really good key plays.
Hodge and Curry-Betty as finishers on the wing, but Beale has a purpose, and he understands his purpose to link with Foley to get in the right places to put other people into space. Folau has a purpose, link with his wingers, stay on those outside channels, look threatening, attack space, find space, all of that stuff. But they're also invited to play, and what Australia do have is that happy medium. They do allow people to play heads up rugby, they do allow people to get on the ball, they also have it structured, and they also have like they understand exactly what they're doing, they understand each other. And in Beale and Folau you have a great example of something that the All Blacks are missing, which is like a telepathic combination going on in the backline. Players who understand each other. Ben Smith certainly hurting the All Blacks, and
like they still have him. It can't be understated. Like they're choosing not to use Ben Smith, which is something that no other team could afford to do.
I think I'm going to make this statement now, just wondering, I'll go out and say it because it is something I think, as much as I do think that the All Blacks are still by far and away the best team in the world, this is a loss in a dead rubber.
It's true, and it's the end of a long season for them.
It's also Australia playing at their peak, playing a wonderful game of rugby, and you can't overstate just how good the Wallabies were, just how much they stifled the All Blacks, and the fact that the All Blacks stayed in it with one of the best teams in the world playing at their peak is a testament to just how great they are. But from the perspective of a team that believes, and rightly believes, that they are front runners for the World Cup and should be head and shoulders above everybody, from that perspective, I think one of the glaring weaknesses in their team, not in terms of personnel but in terms of understanding of what you're doing, is in the centre. I don't think they're doing any. I don't think they're doing themselves justice picking the centres that they have. I think the modern game is dictating, in terms of how you attack, in terms of the structures that are there, the modern game is dictating that more and more you're seeing your first centre, your second 5/8, whatever you want to call him, your number 12, needs to be a distributor, needs to be someone who can get the ball wide, needs to be someone who can link with your outside backs, and there's not enough of that going on. Their centres are operating together in the inside channels, and then when they're moving it to the outside channels, all of that seems to be on the 10. All of that seems to be on the 10.
Well, to be honest, now, Crotty does play games. He played a very poor game.
He did.
It was an unusual performance from Crotty, but he does provide that link role from 13.
I don't think he does. I think he's really, really good, but I don't think he moves it wide enough. I don't think he has that to his game yet, and maybe it could be played into his game. But I think very much, if you look at the way the All Blacks attack, whether it's with Anton Leonard-Brown or Sonny Bill, it's not a personnel issue. They're all world class players, but they're just narrow in the centre, and when they move it wide, it's either on Reid or on Supawanga or on Barrett or whoever it is, like Kieran Reid is out of reference and give you that man from time to time. But in terms of how they move their ball wide, I think they need more from a distribution point of view, and without drastically changing the way they use their fullbacks, which I think would be a mistake because their fullbacks are such weapons.
Well, that's kind of part of the philosophy, I think, in terms of their centre thing, is that they're big, and like certainly with Sonny Bill Williams, they're big, they're narrow, they're dangerous. They sit a lot of defenders down. Certainly Sonny Bill Williams sits his fair share of defenders down and creates that space for your Damien McKenzie.
I don't know if that's even true though, because I think most of the space is being created by the forwards. I think a lot of the All Black tries, if you look back on them this year, have come from attacking the blind side, have come from 15 links with winger or out half links with winger, and then they're gone. It's been the wingers. It's been Rico Ioane finding the space and scoring the tries this year, or Damien McKenzie in broken field. It hasn't, the breaks and the pacey attacks, the dangerous attacks haven't really come from the centres, apart from like the game breaking play from Sonny Bill Williams, which is still a factor.
Which is what makes him so damn hard to drop as well. For sure, and his defence as well, which is stellar.
It's a debate, it's a conversation, but I'm going to go down the record and say that I'm sceptical of that. And I think if they do,
you've said that before.
If they do stall, it might be because they're not attacking right. They're not with the modern game in terms of how they're using their centres. Whereas everybody else is getting on board, whether it's the Lions with Sexton and Farrell, Australia with Beale and Foley, even South Africa are using Serpentine looks like a Sonny Bill Williams. They're trying to use him in a much more distribution oriented way. He'll get at a first receiver, use that screen ball behind with Yankees or hopefully Pollard.
We saw Leinster using Henshaw that way, from 13 in more recent Champions Cup games. And even Marcelo Bosch for Saracens, and Andy Good actually for Saracens from fullback, doing that job of second distributor. But more and more you're seeing you have to be able to move the ball with width. You have to have options always. Almost every play you have to have the option to go wide or go narrow, and too often it looks telegraphed when the All Blacks get the ball. It's either like, if the two centres outside Barrett, you know that it's going to be narrow, and that's just one or two things that happened today. Granted, they scored a load of tries, buckets of tries. It wasn't really the problem. They were kicking the ball too much, but if they do stall an attack, that'll be the reason why. Right. Yeah, no, it's an interesting call, particularly if it ends up with someone like Supawanga or just an inexperienced non-Bowden Barrett at 10. It just creates a lot more pressure on you, and then that's kind of what puts up your multi-phase, and those are when the questions get asked. They're tough questions, like, because the All Blacks still look nigh on unstoppable when they're in the mood.
But nigh on is a big word, isn't it? Like, and when they're in the mood, and when they're in the mood matters. I mean, are they going to lose the mood in playoff time? Like, is this just like, did they lose the Lions? The Lions' second test was a big game for them, lest we forget, and they got that so wrong. And now they can use the excuse in this game and in the Chicago game that it's dead rubber, doesn't matter, yada yada. We were out eating in Chicago pubs or whatever. The excuses are food poisoning.
Food poisoning.
Well, it must be food poisoning.
Nah.
But whatever the excuses are, the reality is that 3 times in the last year, and more, to be honest, because again, it happened in Cape Town, it happened in Dunedin. They played beneath themselves. They played not to an All Black standard, and in many senses, that gap appears to be narrowing. That gap that was firmly there throughout the 2015 World Cup, and before and beyond. They've just been better than everyone else by this much, and then they went through the World Cup for a shortcut, beat everybody, grand, we're champs. Looks less likely to happen in 2019, which is concerning for them. They're losing ground on the field, and that's because the field is strengthening, but it's also because they're stalling somewhat.
Yeah, somewhat. I would say that in terms of to raise a personnel issue, you talked about 10. I think Brodie Retallick is irreplaceable to that team as well, in terms of if they're going to be it's the difference between them being a World Cup winning team and maybe they'll win the World Cup, maybe they'll lose in the semis, kind of thing, because they can be beaten with any of their other row combinations. Just bring their pack right down from that, like, beyond elite, best in the world.
The
pack,
stats back that up.
back down to just an elite professional pack.
He wasn't playing in any of those games. He wasn't playing in any of the last 3 that they've lost.
It's like
the stats do that.
It's on paper. Like, his value to that team is just immense, and like, I don't know what's to be done for that other than, like, keep having him around to try and get the others to play that role. But he is just so exceptional that it's kind of hard to say.
It almost happens without you noticing. Like, with both Beauden Barrett and Brodie Retallick, the players are so good that your team just starts subconsciously leaning on them, and then you don't realise, because, like, you look at the wingers and you look at fullback and it's like, oh, we lose Ben Smith, we get a Damien McKenzie, we lose Julian Sevilla, we get a Rico Ioane. You know, and it almost feels, this conveyor belt can't be stopped. And you look at 7, we have to choose between Sam Kane and Matt Todd and Arlie Sevilla and all of these guys who would walk into any other team on the planet, and you're just like, holy crap.
Well, when you think of, like, how Brodie Retallick has changed the lock position, we did discuss that on the podcast before, because we have our own big Dev Toner, who has, like, his growth from when first we saw him step onto the turf in the RDS, and it was like, whoa, look at that giant. And he was a bit goofy, he was quite skinny, and his hands were not all that good when he started out. But now, through Brodie Retallick's example, really, he's modelled himself on that. Like, he's embracing that role as first receiver and distributor from the pack as well, like, and pack leader and line out option. And he's grown immensely on that template, and there are a few others as well. I think a good few others who are those kinds of super athletes who have all those physical attributes, and it's just the way Retallick uses them, and certainly used them in the years gone by, that has caught everyone's eye and changed how people are viewing what a lock should be doing. And it's like it's worked its way in to all teams across the board. Like, you're talking about the Saris templates and stuff, it's all designed off that like Crusaders and All Black philosophy of having your second rows be receiving off the 9 and bringing the 10 in or not, but being that link man. And he's you can see why you would lean on him, because he's just so exceptional. But I suppose maybe it's just like an emphasis, like once he's out, there needs to be an emphasis on before kickoff that you two have a job to do, because we're missing Brodie. You have to be our Brodie. And, like, I don't know, because the other thing that, like, when it goes wrong, like, systems failures across the board, like, one issue I do still have is Sam Cane. I don't like I've never quite been convinced of Sam Kane's elite caliber. I see him slot in well when the whole pack and the whole team are demolishing folks, and he does his job industriously. I just don't think he's there entirely when they need him to be in a true 7 role when the game's going that way. He doesn't quite find plays in the way that Hooper does for Australia, actually. Yeah, I think I would rate Hooper as more highly than I would Sam Cane, based on just the evidence of a lot of times.
Sam Cane finds big steals. I mean,
he does find big steals, but he's very often playing with a team that's superior. And when he finds himself in compromising positions in games, he doesn't look that comfortable. He doesn't look like the guy who's gonna solve it for you. That would be my main criticism, because he's an elite level player and he's a very skillful player as well. He's very useful in the loose as well as technically we're very good, but It's just that the top few inches in terms of his world class calendar.
The point that we have to emphasise as well before we get,
we've
comments
wrapped up.
but like this is the point, we always have to be clear sort of in what we're saying. We understand what we're saying, but like it's entirely possible that the All Blacks could go into a World Cup with all the flaws that we're talking about and winning.
And win.
But they're that good, and this is the point. It's like they were on the level with an Australian team playing at their peak with all of these flaws and problems. Not on the level, but they won score a game. And like what we're saying is this is what's needed for them to be where they were in relation to everyone else, and this is why they're sort of losing ground. So it's a criticism within a very high bar.
That's exactly it. And I think that's understood as well, because that's how the All Blacks always respond. Like they always respond to the defeat with like a seared memory. Like all the people who've scored tries against the All Blacks still have respect in New Zealand because they remember, because he do. And it's he scored like Robbie Henshaw they know now because he scored a try. Conor Murray they know now, but it's like respect has to be earned, not given, and it's off the back of these results that they learn and grow, because they don't lose that often, so when it does sting. It does cause time to reflect.
Serious respect to Australia, and what Czech is doing there is creating, as much as like I think it's almost divorced. I don't think it covers up or excuses the problems of the ARU at all.
No. And they'll rear their ugly head and come next year's Super Rugby season again.
At some point in future, like the house of cards will probably fall, but it looks like it won't happen this side of 2019. And Cheka is like, and his coaching team have done just an amazing job of getting this team to flow. Like they just look like absolute world beaters. And it's built on just a rock hard foundation of discipline in everything that they do. The other thing that happened in that game was the All Blacks gave away a load of penalties. I didn't see any comments, but I often do hear comments, especially because it was Barnes who was reffing, that it was like his fault. And when I would just look at through the game, is there wasn't one call that wasn't correct. And Australia gave away so few penalties. They were so excellently disciplined.
They're much more calm.
The All Blacks were the calm side. Erratic.
So
that's another problem that they have to address. Barnes got every decision right in that game. If you're an All Black fan blaming him, stop it.
No, it's not true. It's not true at all.
You gotta look at yourselves. But
mind you, if you're also a certain rugby person or a rugby page that likes to put up disparaging All Black material, All Blacks weren't that ill-disciplined either, and every time they were caught and pinged, and anything outside of that was nothing.
You were referring to a Facebook page that deliberately winds people up.
But they know
it
was very annoying. It's very annoying because it's a silly thing, because this All Black team, this iteration, have always been more disciplined than most other teams, particularly like I don't know, Australia. This new iteration this year has grown in discipline. But they used to have problems with that themselves. South Africa are still all over the place in terms of just switching on, switching off. But now they have a very consistent temperament, which was more so what surprised me with this game, was to see players like Coles losing the head. And it was just like they were very...
It was just wrong. It felt wrong from the start. And it went wrong for them.
It did.
Anyway.
But we'll move on, because that's a solid 40-minute chunk of...
we did start a little
late. It's a solid 30-minute chunk of the All Blacks, but it was such a great game. I really did enjoy the game actually as well. It was great to see, and so kudos to Australia.
As much as we had a week of non-Champions Cup action, of regular domestic action, it was all pretty much more or less par for course. We'll talk a little bit about the Pro 14, which is where we were invested, but we are going to go back right now and just look at the Champions Cup.
Guys, but we review overall the first two rounds and
more or less.
The more recent games as well.
The more recent games. I mean, the Champions Cup is now in a very interesting position.
A few big players have revealed themselves. A few potential favourites before the tournament started have now gone, all but gone before even the Christmas fixtures.
They just touch quickly on the couple of games of the week that happened. The games of last week, the last week of the Champions Cup, was first of all when you saw Exeter against Montpellier. That's an absolute stunning result and a stunning match, and Exeter mean business.
They do. Exeter are very, very dangerous. They have a never say die about them, which was very good, because there were certainly two Ndolo tries as per usual in the Montpellier camp. He was grabbing game-winning moments, game-breaking moments, but Montpellier never looked like kicking on, and always looked like the slightly more nervous side, which like is unusual for a French club at home, but they definitely seem to be feeling the weight of expectation on them, the weight of the occasion.
That sort of
and
game-winning nous.
They don't. They don't have a savvy that I suppose can only come with being a slightly older team. They're still lacking their Cruden, which, as much of a weakness it is to the All Blacks, it's a much more significant one to Montpellier.
That's true.
A lack of a Cruden. So like it's a little bit
just letting everybody down.
Yeah, come on, Aaron, get back in the game.
Yeah.
But it was just made for a spectacular game because Exeter can pounce. They have that striking ability as well, and they do play wide, and they're very much a team. I think as well, very disciplined at times. Certainly when it went away from them, it looked like at points in the second half like it was going to get away from them, and that Montpellier were just too good and too strong because they were getting the better of the physical exchanges, Montpellier, a lot of the time. But there was no finish apart from Nadolo doing some class finishing. There was very little just polished their performance, and they ended up, even though they blitzkrieged them a few times when they decided to get into the mood and in the groove of playing, they always let that slide again and slide back into complacency, and then Exeter noticed that and capitalised, and they deserved the win. They entirely deserved the win.
They're emerging as more than just a dark horse. It's a serious European player.
This is part of my growing theory that like a team needs a few years to establish itself. We've seen it a lot. We've seen it with Racing, a lot of French clubs certainly who go on spending sprees over the summer, and then have all these expectations come the calendar year for the rugby thing, and then it doesn't work.
Yeah,
it doesn't work. And then if they're slightly more idiotic of the sugar daddies, they may start petulantly throwing out contracts and ripping up things and sending players away or banning them or bad mouthing them in the press or any number of things.
We don't need Buddy Sully. We're talking about Morad Bouchalalan, who's a bad man.
Yeah, whatever. But it takes a while for them to gel and start playing. And Exeter, similar to Sarries, even though Sarries have been far more, like obviously they've had more success because Sarries have now established themselves. But Exeter have been dangerous ever since they got into the Champions Cup. We certainly experienced that in their first year here. We were maybe a little below a Leinster standard of whatever we would
they weren't at the elite contender stage.
No,
they were dark horses.
They were dark horses then. But after years of steady growth and Premiership champions now, they're coming in with some pedigree and with an ethic, like a team. They try and paint a picture when they play as well. They know what they're trying to do. They know who their key players are. They have Steenson at 10. They have Nick White, your friend, at 9, who looks just a completely different player from when he was at the Brumbies, because he's doing anything. He's picking, sniping, fixing men. There's a lot of play comes off 9. He's doing very well for them. I know you won't like to hear this. He's not even kicking the ball that much.
He's going to blow it for them.
Yeah. Daragh has never forgiven Nick White. Not even Nick White, but just that Brumbies team of however many years ago.
Such an ugly team. Yeah.
And who was your man from?
Jake White was coaching them.
Jake White was coaching them, and it was your man at fullback, Jesse Mogg, who we saw in action again from Montpellier. And you are right. He's another non-entity at fullback. He's kicking the ball when he shouldn't have been kicking the ball and taking it to the line, but doing it the wrong way and not linking up. Is it like Nadolo only ever gets the ball when he's on the very tail end of a sweeping move after multi-phase, which is good, but otherwise he's coming off his wing and doing a Jamie Roberts line, so they're not like there's certainly no savvy Damien McKenzie going on from Mogs.
Another team in Montpellier who don't quite understand how to use centres.
Yeah. Well, sure, they have
Tamani at 13 is such a problem. Like, as much as he's a lovely guy and a quality player, he's not a 13, and the attack just stops, and there's no thought to it. There's no good link work. And as good as Montpellier looked, as good as physical, as pacey as they looked in the early parts of the season, it's those top 4 inches that get found out in the Champions Cup. That's what I like so much about it as a tournament. It's such a different feel from Super Rugby, which is like a long form league format, and this is what you see in the Pro 14 and everything else. But when you have not quite knockout, but very important, like a little 6-game tournament so early on in the season, it teaches you something about yourself that you can't learn. There's no room. Like teams like the Lions in Super Rugby
don't have it.
It would be it's a different challenge than league format, than just getting points on the board. It's a much different challenge, and it's what Montpellier found out. It's what Glasgow found out, is that the step up to knockout level rugby early in the season is a challenge, and it's an added challenge to a team to sort of negotiate their way through the season like that, and it definitely makes for a much more interesting tournament in my view than just your bog standard league then playoff format. And that's why the Champions Cup is so exceptional. It's such a good tournament. It's the best club tournament in the world, I think. And it's certainly the games that it's turning up already, like this Exeter game in France, just brilliant.
Absolute gem.
Yeah, the other game that I watched from last week was 36-34 win for Saracens over Ospreys.
This is an ball playing Ospreys coming to catch pass and try and catch them napping.
Ospreys looking to play rugby, which I love to see. Ospreys
have improved. They won at the weekend as well.
They did, yeah.
And they're looking better because we were concerned for their health.
They're always a little better than that. They put it up to Clermont, they now put it up to Sarries. What I loved though, it was a lesson in Sarries. Saracens were without Marcelo Bosch, who was a key link man in their defence. Daragh looked a little lost without him. Their defence was much more porous. Like the Ospreys weren't doing much exceptional, and like to be getting caught out so consistently by the likes of Sam Davis. Sam Davis was playing really well, but they looked a little bit lost in defence. There was much less of that wolf pack attitude, much more static, much more man marking, and getting caught out in those little exchanges, getting caught out by good offloads and good lines and good pace, but just not looking like that force that they have been. But is just really refreshing to see from Saracens is that attack is just in flow, and after like a really sloppy half of rugby from them, with all the little passes that they do and those intricate templates that they set up weren't sticking, and there were a few knock-ons, and they were losing. They were I think 17-0 down or something mad. It was looking like a crazy game.
Yeah.
The manner in which, the almost All Black-esque manner in which they just got back into the game and started finding tries was just awesome to see. And it was all about Farrell, but it was all about everybody. They have these wonderful templates that they set up.
That's it. They're sticking to their systems. They trust that it's so important, and it can only be evidence based. This is why you have clubs that have like a tradition of, or a culture of excellence and a culture of winning, even in games when they're the inferior team and don't deserve to, versus a team that will look superior for 70 minutes and lose.
Yes.
And it's only winning things changes that for you.
Yeah.
Because this way, when you do go behind, or you get shell shocked or blitzkrieged by a rampant Osprey side, you don't have to panic. You don't have to think that it's all gone to shit, we need to cop on. You don't have to yell, you don't have to think. You can just address certain errors, but stick to the systems, because you trust that the coach says you do this. We trust the coach, so if we do this, we must be able to score, or we must be going to score. So we just play through that way.
And Owen Farrell is thriving in it.
He loves that environment. He loves that kind of style of play. It gives him free roam to pick passes.
Exactly.
Which is what he's great at.
They have guys running lines from all angles. He has 4 or 5 different options every play, and then he always seems to pick the right one. They get good offload games going. They have players running around the corner. They have players looking really, really good in the contact, winning collisions, and they just seemed to set in gear and believe they were going to score a try, and then nothing was going to stop them. The quick ball was excellent. Again, so some of the things you notice that really separate the top teams that we're going to talk about as flaws in what Ireland are doing, just really efficient things like quick ball and cleaning out. Sarries again really efficient at just correctly cleaning out, and it's one of the reasons why they're hot favourites to win the tournament. They just have this ability to score tries, but defensive frailties, no question, and that's a concern going forward for them. So
it's also a target for any potential opponents as well. It's a lot to analyse. You can it's an interesting game.
I've yet to see someone stop them. Stop them from tacking. Stop them. I've yet to see what it looks like. You almost saw it in parts of the first half when they were knocking on balls and looking a bit confused. The short passes, especially from forward to forward. You're talking about that Brodie Retallick at first receiver. They had a bit of that going on with Itoje and the boys, and they just it wasn't working. George Cruz knocked on a bad ball, and it was like it almost looked like it might be falling apart on them. But then they clicked into gear, and when they clicked into gear, they look impossible to stop. And we're yet to see someone really target, whether it's Farrell or Good or whoever it is. Are you going to get out and actually stop them? I've yet to see
this
what
is
that looks like.
Munster played them last year, but with all of that like muster and pluck, gung ho, essentially, they managed to keep them at bay for a while before the tries eventually came.
Yeah.
But I think there are 2 packs. I'm trying to think of citing any more.
But defences.
I think what I'm going to say is I think there are 2 other packs in Europe that could paint a picture of a game where they dominate Sarries, nullify them up front, which will not happen against anyone else, which is why we're seeing them able to get them into this flow. I think La Rochelle potentially could be one. I think Leinster potentially could be one. I wouldn't mind seeing either of those games because I just don't know what will happen. Like maybe it's the opposite's true, and maybe Leinster will bully everyone all the way until they get to Saracens, and then Saracens bully us just as likely. But I think we have the pedigree in the pack to disrupt them, which is what no other team is managing to do thus far.
I would be very concerned about Leinster's line out against Saracens.
I would too.
I would be very concerned about Saracens.
It would be a big game for Dev.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. If we pick Cian Healy, I don't see them having
I wouldn't stop them. Any team in the world, international or club, matching Cian Healy in the scrum. But there you go.
Yeah, it's based on the evidence. Like for the last year and a bit, he has just been mincing everyone in the scrum.
It's just like Tadzuki and Ngwenya. This is Cian Healy we're talking about. Leinster who said, "It's like, do you remember?"
He's like Ngwenya.
He is like Ngwenya.
Fast in the open.
Tadzuki Ngwenya was the winger for Biarritz years ago, and
of the US.
And of the US.
Yeah.
And he went through a period from I think about 2007 through 2012 when he was creating a list of players, of world class players who he had burned on the
Shane
outside.
Williams,
Shane Williams, Brian Habana, Douglas Howlett, Doug Howlett, he was
Douglas.
Doug Howlett, and there were more. There was like a good list of like all the top wingers in the world who he had ruined on the outside. And Cian Healy has that list of world class tight heads who he has made fools of. Whether it's Dan Cole or Carl Heyman or Ben Franks, like the list goes on and on and on. There are no tight heads on the planet who he hasn't got the better of, you know. And Cian Healy would be a weapon in that game. Sarries would be relatively comfortable going into it. I suppose it's a good like pivot into just the favourites, just talking about who the early favourites are for the championship before we wrap it up, I suppose. It's very obviously those three teams who you talked about are the front runners at the moment. Saracens, Leinster and La Rochelle are the best positioned
This
teams.
is the other thing, like to segue back to the point I was talking about winning culture, I would make Leinster and Sarries slightly more likely than candidates than La Rochelle purely based on that history, because I feel like
La Rochelle last year failing to win in the playoffs.
Exactly, this is it. So they have that to draw on from the well and not much else from this team, whereas there's a lot of evidence for both Sarries and Leinster players that when they have to go to the well, when the game's in the balance and it's the game and it has to be the moment to win, they have a bit more evidence-based confidence. They have certainly a cause to have more than La Rochelle do. So that's why I would rank them slightly higher. But in terms of what we've seen from the teams thus far, certainly they are the front runners. And they look excellent. Like La Rochelle are such a welcome addition to this tournament. Like, even though it wasn't nice, we don't like seeing Ulster getting shellacked.
I was very surprised by that.
You were very surprised. You were backing Ulster to be something different, but their tight five just isn't at it.
Yeah,
it isn't there, and like their pack just isn't stellar at all, and that's what the telling difference is, particularly in a game when you're being blitzkrieged by like La Rochelle's philosophy of just all out attack all the time is a joy to watch. And also when you're being dominated in the pack, it seems like misery to defend, which is why Ulster were kind of head scratching afterwards, going like, oh, we defended so well, and just it was a 10-minute patch that cost us. And it's like, it's like not entirely true. Like, they failed to score when they needed to score. They threw an intercept first thing that they did in the game. Like, they made it harder for themselves to win. They tried to play the high risk, high tempo rugby against La Rochelle, and it didn't pay off. They ended up having to defend.
In the early part of the season, when they had, actually it was Bow at 13 with McCluskey. They looked to be a real telepathy between those two. It's something that I really do rate in the back line, is having at least two players who really know each other and get each other and know how to put each other in space.
And Stockdale seem to have it for them a bit.
Something of it, but they're just those strike plays that look so dangerous. They need to have the ruthlessness first of all to finish them, and they need to find them more. And I certainly think it's in them, but their inability to do that the last couple of weeks, this week against Leinster as well, they stalled so badly in attack.
So it was not even a good game because they were so bad. It was very disappointing.
So those are the three major favourites.
We have Munster, who probably will navigate their group and get out, and still, like, once they're in knockout mode, they're there.
I would include Munster maybe in the dark horses rather than the head-to-head favourites. Leinster are right up there so far. We're obviously big Leinster fans. We're season ticket holders. We go to the matches. They look good. They don't look perfect.
No, they look beatable, and yet looks also like on our day we can beat anyone.
What I like about Leinster's identity, as much as it's about attacking rugby. It's almost just as much about winning rugby.
Mm-hmm.
Leinster aren't a team that have to play a certain way.
No.
They're very versatile, and they tailor their game to their opponents in a way that you might often criticise from a team like the All Blacks, but it's not so much about preventing the opposition from doing what they're good at.
It's just
so
establishing what we need to do.
It's attacking their weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
So you saw against Montpellier, big team, big fat team from the top couture, not used to playing at this high tempo Pro 14 pace. Leinster moved the ball around, they found tries, they ran it around them, and Montpellier couldn't cope. And then last week with Glasgow, we had the evidence that
they play at fast tempo rugby,
yeah,
so you can go high risk and play fast.
Against Exeter, they got out-muscled. Leinster capitalised on that and out-muscled them all over the park, and it was a great game, that game, but Glasgow again couldn't handle Leinster's pack, and that's where Leinster won that game. That and Johnny Sexton.
And when you look at what the Crusaders did all the way through the knockout rugby and the Super Rugby, like it's going to be the packs that are going to decide things. Some of the old adages are true, but I
don't know about that.
I think it's true. I think that that's what I feel with Glasgow, because I was very optimistic for Glasgow, more optimistic for their chances than Ulster's. Certainly, I thought they had a chance to storm into.
To be honest, I just thought the group was too tough for them.
That's it. They're still on an elite level, but it's a tough ask to go in against.
I think if they had Munster's group, they could have had a chance of going the whole way like Munster do, by just getting to knockout rugby. But it was always going to be just a mountain of a challenge for them to get to knockout rugby, and they just couldn't deal with it.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that this old adage of packs win matches is always true.
No, it's not always true. But
look at Murrayfield this year.
Yeah.
Murrayfield, Scotland beat Ireland this year. I mean, we've seen evidence all year of of teams like Ireland are the perfect example of a team that can dominate up front, but if you can't find the tries, you're not going to win the games.
It's true.
And Scotland are an example of a team that doesn't have that good a pack, but they can find tries like lightning, and they can easily steal games from you with that kind of play. The All Blacks the same, can be dominated up front. Not that it often happens, as you say, but very often they win games by striking, and that's the back line. Very often that's the back line.
Indeed.
So
but I just think
there's a healthier balance.
There is a healthier balance, but I feel over the long-term tournaments that the stronger packs survive, if you like, survive longer than the ones who are just attacking flair-based and living off 30% possession is no healthy way to navigate through a tournament.
It's no way to be the best team. The best team needs to be good everywhere, and this is what's good about Leinster. But I certainly would contest that. I think having a bad backline is as bad as having a bad pack, and we saw that in the last World Cup. Like big teams like England and Ireland got beat by quick teams who were looking to score tries, and I still maintain very much so, despite like Glasgow going out and Scarlets going out, I still maintain very much that those strike play teams can absolutely catch slower big teams out, and it's something that could have happened to Leinster. I mean, there were times in the early parts of that game with Glasgow where there was loads of space on the wide channels, and Leinster, like what happened to them last year against Scarlets, can happen if their opponents are ruthless. They leave that space, they leave gaps, they do miss tackles, and if a team is lightning accurate, like an All Black level accurate, a Clermont level accurate, Leinster can be blitzkrieged, and it's the teams that do the blitzkrieging that can go on and win that tournament. And while I know it's not going to happen this year, that doesn't mean that it's void.
No, that's true. I'll concede that point, I'm sure.
Okay.
But it's a bit of a shame in terms of the colour of the tournament, but we still have a few more games to go. But yes, Scarlets disappointing again. In Europe when we need them to step up, because we're coming at it from the perspective of like this was always our thing. Like Leinster, no one has seen Ospreys play their very best game apart from Leinster. That no other team has experienced it, and so why would they respect them? Why would you ask any English team if they would fear Ospreys in the pool? They'd be licking their lips going, yeah, we'll have those boys. And it's evidence based. Although they weren't the worst offenders this time, they went up against Sarries and they did very well.
Well, here's the thing. Even as Ospreys were playing Saracens and they were looking like they were going to win the game, I said the same thing the previous week when they were playing Clermont, and I maintain it now. Like, I was thinking to myself, even if they go and win this game and pull off this miracle result that I respect, I don't believe for 1 second that they're going to do what Clermont and Saracens are going to do and just put Northampton to bed home and away.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna, and I still maintain it even after the first 2 losses. They're gonna lose one of those games against Northampton, which is inexcusable because Northampton are a rudderless ship.
Mm-hmm.
But Welsh teams, like generally speaking, cannot beat English teams. They
certainly can't seem to, like, whatever about beating them. Sometimes they do get the result, but they don't perform the way that, like, the way they should or the way they do. Because like Welsh teams when they're in flow, certainly Scarlets when they're in flow, it is a performance piece. They're loving life, loving rugby.
Yeah.
It's very pure in the way it looks, and they just can't seem to find that. They can't tap into it when they're playing against the English teams, particularly in England. But I don't know what that impasse is, because like, I don't know, we come at it from a different perspective, because Ireland actually seem to have the opposite. Like like New Zealand struggled to play in Twickenham, France struggled to play in Twickenham, Wales struggled to play in Twickenham. Ireland relish going to Twickenham and normally perform. Whether we win or whether we lose, we do perform at Twickenham. Whereas there are other teams who come away from Twickenham scratching their head going, Jesus, I didn't play well at all there. And like the whole looking at each other going, what happened? And it ends up taking this shape of just England having all the ball and bullying them and finding and it's just, it's a sad sight. And we want to, like, from the Pro 12, Pro 14 now, we have the point of view, like, we're coming at looking at the product in the early half of the season, think it looks great, think it looks super marketable, loving the addition of South African refs into the mix as well, loving the addition of the South African teams overall, just the different colour of the tournament. Love how, like, Leinster won that game in Ravenhill last week. They prioritised it, not just because they hadn't won there in a while, but it's a format in the Pro 14 where we're a bit more unsure of the leave thing. Like, we can't just, like, haphazardly sacrifice points the way he maybe could
to be
before.
fair, Leo's selection looked like he might be doing just that. It was a weakened team. They just happened to go out and beat Ulster. Because such is Leinster's depth.
Yeah, that's true. But I just think it's a marketable tournament, but it needs other clubs pulling up their end. Like Scarlets, when you're the champions and you manage to beat both us and Munster on Irish shores, which is like a huge achievement we respect immensely. Great stuff. Back it up. Go in there with us.
If you can go to Ireland and beat Leinster and Munster, you can go to England and beat Bath.
Exactly.
But what I will say is that if you're a betting person, like, it's a stretch, but Bath have all of the units.
Definitely another dark horse.
All of the units to win a team. Like, they have Priestley playing like he's never played before in his life. Fotu Ali playing like he's never played before in his life. Then they've just got a really good spine to the team. Their backline has, like, these really quality English internationals all through it, like Rocha Daguni and Anthony Watson, who didn't have a good game but can strike. Jonathan Joseph can strike. So they have ability to find tries. They have a 10 and a 9 that are controlling the game. They have a pack that can go toe to toe with pretty much anybody. So it's
and they have time now to gel as well.
Time
they're
to gel.
only going to get better.
Well, they have a double header against Toulon. That's good. They're going to learn. They're going to learn a lot about themselves.
That's it. That's what. And again, like you're saying, I love this tournament for providing challenges just like that, so you can earmark
very unique
challenges,
challenges that you don't get in league formats. So it's why, like, Super Rugby, whatever about it being a higher quality tournament, it's debatable. It's up there. You know, it probably is, especially when you look at the New Zealand teams. The format isn't as good. And the format of this is just great, and it gives you these really tasty matches around Christmas time that we're already really looking forward to. And whoever wins that match up between Bath and Toulon are going to emerge as early dark horse contenders outside of that big three that have stepped up after the first 2 weeks.
Definitely true. But who else have we got then? Racing.
Munster. Racing.
Says me to Racing.
Racing are going to play Munster. Well, they already played Munster and lost in that ugly game.
They did.
That's Racing all over, you know. Dan Carter on the pitch, you know, all Rokotoko on the pitch, all these great players on the pitch, and a Munster team with, like, Keatley at 10 beats them. That's the Munster all over. That's Racing all over. They're not winning anything. Yeah.
And it's that same concept. It's like you can bring all these heads over, but it's like also I think I kind of feel like I've heard reports from many people, many players going to France and being shocked. Certainly ones who go from Ireland and get over there and just, like, certainly when you're in Leinster, everything's like micromanaged. You have doctors doing this, nutritionists showing you what you need to eat. Your gym work is regimented, your training's regimented, everything's monitored. Your success is charted by a massive team of all this, and it's all hands on, and everyone knows their role, and it fine oiled machine. I haven't been to New Zealand, haven't seen their infrastructure. I'm sure it's the same, just based on the results and based on the quality of the stuff you're seeing. I'm sure it's the same, if not just comparable. Whereas I see that a lot of players go over to France and find it haphazardly done, even though they're spending all this money. it's not that professionally run. Bar like a few, they have some good coaches who will do some good coaching work, but a lot of it's still left up to you as to how much you want to put in or not, which is not an option in these other teams. So it's more tragic when a young player like a Simon Zebo, which just happened. Simon Zebo signing for Racing, he's going to go there and find that it's nowhere near as professional as Munster from the ground up.
And well, from
it'll be up to him how he does.
This is the tweet that he posted, was him like with his son going family first, and you're like, okay, from a personal level, you know,
great.
This is great. You're going to get a bucket of money. You're going to be set more or less for life if you don't blow it, and you're going to have a great chance to represent your family. But in terms of like a player growth situation, you're not going to be the player that you could be by going there, and nobody gets better by going to France. Nobody.
Yeah, it's true.
Everybody gets worse. Everybody looks worse.
Apart from Johnny Wilkinson, but he just seemed to own his role.
Johnny Wilkinson looked the same as he always did. And then that guy won a World Cup.
Yeah, he's just
20s.
super focused and professional anyway, so he wasn't going to be like. He probably embraced the role of the coach being like the Stephen Jones one, going like the coach going, you figure out the back play.
Johnny Wilkinson is a unique personality as well.
Yeah, but like certainly when you look at all the retired All Blacks gone out to pastures greener and literally greener. When you see them gain a little bit of weight, get a little bit more sluggish, and not seem to care all that much more, it's why it's more of a shame when you see someone like Aaron Cruden go there, who's young, still has a lot to give to the All Blacks. More like I don't begrudge Dan Carter living in Paris for a while and getting a payday.
I don't even begrudge. It's not even like about not caring. Like you look at Nemani Nadolo and you can tell that he cares a lot. Joe Tamani cares a lot. They're bitter. They're sore. They can't believe that they've lost these 2 games, but they're just not being taught what to do. They're not being used right. There's nothing smart about it. And they're just being themselves, and
it's frequently becoming not enough anymore.
And it's gonna happen more and more when more teams start to learn from Mark McCall and take the shape of Saracens. Like it's just there's no French team apart from maybe La Rochelle that could lay a glove on Saracens. And to be honest, I think Saracens would do La Rochelle as well.
Probably. Maybe we'll find out. We'll see how La Rochelle keep going. But
Racing are the typical example of a team that are going to lose in the playoffs, and that's all there is to it. They haven't got the nous. They haven't got the game management. They don't play as a team. They haven't got the ethic. They haven't got anything that Australia have that we talked about at the beginning of the show. They don't have anything.
And they arguably have better players if you're talking about. Whatever the perspective of the guy who owns it is obviously buying his dreams.
They got Leone Nakarau, they got Dan Carter, they got Machino, they got good players. But they're not meant to do. They don't have an ethic. They don't have an identity. They don't have an ability to win games. And then Munster in Thomond Park, as good as Munster are, is a good benchmark for a team that should win the Champions Cup. Like any team that believes that they should win the Champions Cup, that's just a good early challenge. Go to Thomond Park and win. You should do that. Saracens would do that. I think Leinster would do that in a Champions Cup context.
We'll never find that out though.
No.
So don't know. But you're dead right. You're dead right. And like certainly when you're just looking at that, Keeley at 10, what's that about? Keeley at 10 versus Dan Carter, and yet it was Keeley pulling the strings, and it was like, what's going on here? It boggles my mind at how.
Well, that game was 0-0 at 50 minutes.
Yeah.
They're just going through the motions, getting tired, and then Munster, Conor Murray found the play.
Yeah. World class player, fair play to him, and also a good play, great score, great noise in the crowd. Actually, it was such a weird atmosphere. Like Thomond Park's great for that, and providing like atmospheric quality to a game, and it was just you could sense the tension and the relief in that because he had a bigger bit of a run, and you could feel the whole crowd just effervescent. It was like a breath first, and then the cheer. And I just love that. It was an interesting game actually. 0-0 after an hour of play. So what's going on here? But anything else to add on that?
Not really. I mean, we could talk pretty quickly about what happened in the last week, or maybe even. You know what? We'll just talk about where we. No, we've been through where we stand. We don't need to go through that again. In terms of results from last week, just so that we can
just do a wrap up.
We don't even need to. I'm just going to see if there's anything interesting that happened. The main interesting thing that happened, we just watched the Pro 14. Leinster won away in Ulster.
For our first time in I think 7 years, someone said.
Something mad like that. Yeah. Usually they just wait till the knockout stages to beat Ulster, but they did it all by themselves.
Will this be a role reversal? Will we be losing in the knockout stages to Ulster?
No.
Well,
it really doesn't look likely. I mean, as much as I love it, well, maybe they'll put it together.
They do have time, and now they have to focus on the Pro 14 because
No. They were in it. They won the first week.
Yeah.
No, as much as like it's an away loss in France.
Yeah.
They got a double header against. Is it Harlequins?
Is it?
Yeah, they got a double header against Harlequins. You win away and home, and then you're back in it. Ulster can't be throwing the white flag in just yet.
I don't know, but they always wave. Their whole crowd is full of people waving white flags.
Yeah.
It's not good.
You know, there's nothing that really grabs you from the last week of Pro 14 results. The same is true of the Premiership.
Zebra beat the Cheetahs.
No, they didn't. They lost. Yeah, 24-23. Did you just watch the first half?
Zebra. Oh no, they did. Yeah, they lost. Yeah, shit. Yeah, no, I only watched the first half. God damn.
Yeah, they were up by a bit.
They were up by a bit.
This is the same thing that happened to them in the Challenge Cup the week before. They were like 31. It was actually led 30 points, I think, to 7 at half time against, I think it was Oyonnax or something like that, and lost the game.
Yeah.
So they
I'd
can't have no gas.
I'd also say fair play to Edinburgh getting the result in Benetton, because that's become a tricky place to go after too long. Like a little stand from that result at the end of the game. At the end of
the weakness that the Pro 14 is experiencing, it's drawing up some good games for sure. But the reason why, as a league, I think it's stalling right now, is the very early doors. Obviously, Connacht beat Munster. That was a huge game that we could mention as well. Connacht did a great job beating Munster. But the reason that I think it's stalling format-wise is because very early doors, it's starting to become apparent what the playoffs are going to be. And there's already a good few dead rubbers going on,
right?
And that's starting to look like a problem. It's looking like, obviously Connacht could strong arm their way back into contention in the first conference.
Yeah.
Beyond that, Edinburgh maybe, but probably not. We already have our 6 playoff contenders. Ospreys could go on.
What we do have is a great year for the Italian clubs thus far, and
that's true.
A real of run of games to bring them into the Six Nations with a bit of
even into November. I mean, I'm very interested to see what that looks like. We could probably even pivot there now. International season is coming up.
It is.
So
we're on break now, so it's
we're on the break. There's still club rugby going on this week, and this initial week there's sparse amounts of results. What I want to talk about, we want to get just a bit parochial for now.
Ireland squad for November.
Yeah, just a bit parochial and talk about the Ireland squad that was named by Joe Schmidt. Like, again, there's no other word for it. We're just talking about it because it's what we know and what we can care about and our thoughts. Because Joe Schmidt, who's the Ireland coach, is obviously a great coach. He's beaten the All Blacks, he's won Champions Cups, he's won Six Nations. He's got a real great pedigree to him, but the question is, can he take Ireland to new heights in the World Cup? And this year they've had a very mixed year. Lost to Wales, very, very poor. Lost to Scotland, got blitzed, didn't really learn from it. Pulled off the big game that we knew they would pull off against England and showed their class. Then sort of regrouped, went away, went over to Japan and the US and stuffed them, really put them apart, played some lovely rugby, looked to be a bit more expansive. But there's still a huge question mark. Have we learned in the big games? Are Ireland going to look as they've looked? Brute force before anything else. We are the Springboks. We will maul you, we will crush you, Sexton, we'll put the ball in the corners. But Christ, we're going to take a while to score a try.
It'll be coming for 10 minutes before we end up knocking it down, which is the opposite of that striking that instinct that we credit so many other teams. And it's not for the lack of players. I think Joe Schmidt runs as tight a ship as you will see anywhere in the world in terms of his coaching ticket, his ethos. The players are all borderline devoted to him, know exactly what he wants, don't want to disappoint him. It's all great from that point of view. I just don't think he uses wingers right at all. That's my main gripe. It's like if you're talking about New Zealand centres, I'm talking about Ireland's wingers and fullback, or just our back three is lacking. And it's like you see so much of it in just the average rugby fan around town, or the average rugby fan who'll proudly tell you that either one of Keith Earls or Andrew Trimble, if they're I've had people from Ulster tell me that Andrew Trimble is a world class winger, and I just pull my hair out going, no, he is not that. He's a very good player, very tidy player, but Rico Ioane.
Yeah, you have to look down south to see what wingers can be.
Yeah.
And the typical example of what happens with Ireland, you saw it the last few weeks with Leinster. You take Adam Byrne and the team, you put in Fergus McFadden. Fergus McFadden is a typical example of an Irish winger. Disciplined, industrious. Joe Schmidt loves him.
Same with Dave Carney.
But what he can't do is whether it's an Adolo or anyone else, it takes away a way that other teams score. It takes it out of the picture for you, and the way that the other teams score is make space for their winger. So you make space for your winger, and it's going to be a try, or at least like very close to a try or a line break or something like that. You give Rico Ioane 10 yards of space in the tram lines, he'll go. He'll go and he'll look to score. If he's in your half, he is looking to score. He's looking whether it's to link up or to go himself. He's looking to find a try. And you've seen wingers do that. You've seen Nadolo do that. Just be such a weapon, such a try generator on your team. Yeah. That's what wingers almost are for. Everybody else is trying to find space. You find that space, and like lightning, they go. When an Irish winger finds himself in 15 yards of space, he steps in, runs back towards the contact, gains a few yards, and sets the ball back for his pack.
It's not enough.
It's not enough. It just is what it is, in the sense that you're not going to get tries that way. That's one way off the list of ways you can score tries.
Yeah.
So, and Ireland have a lot of them.
Yeah.
They have a lot of them. Where other teams have so many different ways of scoring, Ireland have been very limited in recent times in how they can score tries. They don't really score tries from line breaks.
You don't really score them from kick returns either.
Don't score them from kick returns. Another hugely...
it's a huge role for your wingers.
Yeah.
Those wingers. This is. I'm looking at the top of the bill there, and it's Rob Carney.
This is what I did. I made a list of sort of surprising or notable additions and omissions to the squad, as opposed to just your regular. The whole list can just be a bit overwhelming. But the people who were in the squad that you would kind of almost raise an eyebrow or say, to were just as follows. I suppose I'll read them all out, and then you can just go in. It's Rob Carney, Dave Carney, Andrew Porter, a tight head, Stuart McCluskey, Rob Herring, James Ryan, Dan Levy, Jacob Stockdale, Adam Byrne, Chris Farrell, Darren Sweetman, Bundy Aki, and Ian Keatley. And there's a lot of good and bad in there.
I scratched my head at a few of them. Rob Herring, I think I level the same criticism we were leveling at Gatland for the Lions thing. Like, why are you bringing in Rob Herring? What's he going to add off of this?
I have
Cronin add some pace.
I have in my omissions both Sean Cronin and Miles Scannell. I think, especially Cronin didn't play last week, there must be an injury there.
Maybe.
Like, there must be. There's no reason to pick Rob Herring, who had an awful game again off the bench. So you've got, for hooker for Ireland, you've got Rory Best, Rob Herring, and James Tracy, none of whom are game breakers in that way. Rory Best is going to start and put a shift in, and whoever comes off the bench is going to add nothing. It's just hopefully they won't take too much from the team. So it's worrying in that regard. But Cronin obviously is the incumbent there, and I would be very surprised if that was a tactical decision.
Right. So that's one covered. There are a few that I like in there. I like the presence of Dan Levy, like James Ryan, like McCluskey being in there.
I like. Don't talk about wingers. I like Stockdale.
I like Stockdale, and I like Byrne. I wish Tommy Bowe were there, because he's another one who's a game-breaking world-class winger.
Tommy Bowe and Keith Earls, actually, as much as you decry Keith Earls, he's become
much better this year.
But they're the only two players who, when they in Ireland, really, even Stockdale, who's been really good, they're the only two players really in Ireland when they get the ball, it's like danger, which is really what you want to see in a way.
Craig Gilroy.
He's injured. He's been long-term injured. But that's it. You want a player to take the ball and be danger, instantly danger. That's what you want in a winger.
Kieran O'Halloran has a bit of that touch of that.
Yeah, he was left out of the squad.
He was.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, it speaks to these. I would much rather have Kieran O'Halloran there than Rob Carney.
Yeah.
Even though Rob Carney's been a great servant, was a stellar fullback for many years. Rock solid on the high ball, a good leader, I suppose, which is probably why he's included there. He just does not read where the space is as a modern fullback should.
It was laughable watching him last week. Every time he got the ball on kick return or in a bit of space, there was one of those typical examples of like Damien McKenzie foaming at the mouth. He had a winger. He was 15 yards, 2-on-2, winger on his left, facing I think a forward and a back, and it was like, this is surely go time.
Yeah.
And he just stepped in and charged and got tackled by two players, and that was it. That was Rob's move. And too often you see that. I suppose I can make the same comment on this squad that I made 7 months ago about the Lions squad when it was announced. The comment that I made at that time was, make no mistake, there's a team that can be made from this squad that could go and win the tour.
Yes, 100%.
But the selection of certain players in the squad leads me to believe that team won't be picked. And this is my concern again for Ireland with Joe Schmidt. The team that should be picked, the backline that should be picked, the backline that would improve Ireland and would get tries, should be with Carberry at fullback. You need Murray and Sexton are undroppable. Then you have Carberry at fullback. You need a McCluskey and Henshaw in the centre for me. Obviously no Rory Scannell, we'll talk about that. That seems to me to be a mistake. So you don't have that subtlety from centre. You're just going to have to live with that using the old school centres.
Aki and
Bundy Aki is not the answer.
No.
And Carberry slotting in as a second distributor. And then
Two
elite wingers, which are at the moment the best wingers you can make from that bunch are Keith Earlson and Jacob Stockdale.
Which is danger.
With
Carberry pulling strings, that's danger.
Some danger.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of danger, but like Rob Kearney's not in that team to play 23.
No.
You know, Joey Carberry is. Joey Carberry's going to be at 23. Rob Kearney's going to start at fullback again, and that's maddening. And if Joe isn't going to learn his lessons, because this won't be the autumn that they're taught to us.
No, we'll win the games with him at 15.
But if Joe won't learn the lessons, it'll be another trophyless season. We won't win the Six Nations. Another trophyless season will pass us by, and another season off the clock for World Cup prep, for getting the team to the top level ahead of the World Cup. So it's pretty bad. But from the pack, there are interesting calls to be made. The pack looking much stronger. Andrew Porter in there. I have a lot of hope for that young man. I think he's a really good tight head. Bit harsh on Finney Beelum, but I don't know if he necessarily has the physicality to last a tight head at an international level. So you've got Ty Furlong, you've got John Ryan, bulk and technique, and then you've got a young man with both, Andrew Porter, who's going to be coming in behind them.
And only getting stronger.
So a lot of strength and depth when it comes to tight head in Ireland, which is not something that we were able to say 10 years ago.
Or even 5 years ago.
It's hooker is a concern. Loose head is not. Great loose heads again. Kilcoyne, Healy, Jack McGrath, Keane Healy, front runner to start in my book, and I actually think Joe will start with him. He likes set pieces and Keane is delivering. Second row, you've got a young man in James Ryan looking really, really good. Back row again, a whole host of options. No Josh, I think Josh is injured, Josh van der Fleer, but nevertheless we're strong there. It'll be interesting to see if Conan gets a look in ahead of Stander, and it'll be interesting to see how their discipline looks.
Glares at camera. Jack Conan is a better player than CJ Stander.
Well, we'll see. Stander was given good offloads in that, right? Like,
he's growing. I know. I appreciate that, but I just don't think he's not good at it either. They're clunky little offloads. He's not.
You really don't like CJ Stander.
I really do not. I don't think he's in the same way that we're criticising. Like Rob Kearney was a great 15 in 2009. And I think he's by and large much the same player. He hasn't disimproved that much. He's still he's physically strong. He's even got a bit stronger in contact. What he's never really had is that link man role to play. He's never really slotted in a first receiver. He's not been that kind of that.
He can't pass football.
Can't really.
Yeah.
That's the problem, and like that is a more pronounced problem in this modern game when you need your 15 helping your 10 out, because like a 10s only kind of quarterback role, which Johnny Sexton plays a lot, leaves too much up to the gods. It's too easy to read from a defensive point of view, and it puts too much pressure on one player, and no one can take that. Like Johnny Sexton sometimes embraces that and delivers great performances. By and large now, Leinster are adopting the notion of having Carberry outside him to help.
Yeah.
And like we need to
not just help, but link up.
Yeah.
Like do interesting things.
Yeah, because it gives Sexton the ability to carry, which he was not displaying for like the last couple of years. Like he broke onto the scene by taking to the line and doing very good things and being physical, dominating presence of the game. Like less possible when you're the only playmaker.
Yeah.
You want to offload and get back in the line.
I hope that Sexton is going to be less hostile to the idea of sharing responsibility, and I think what opened his eyes to that might have been working with Farrell with the Lions. I think that's one of the good aspects of the Lions, is the way it broadens your horizons playing in it, and I think it might have done so for Sexton.
Yeah, it seems so, and like he's been a great player thus far. But to segue back to Rob Kearney, like Rob Kearney's problem is just that he's not a modern fullback. He's not a modern fullback. He's a slightly outdated model of a fullback, and I think like he can still do a job. He's still defensively solid, but he just offers nowhere near enough. And I really do want, like, as much as like we were giving leeway to Joe because we're Leinster fans, and we've seen how well he managed to get Leinster playing, and the trophies that brought, which is obviously like some pedigree to that. But the first years we won 2 Six Nations with, and the joke we're making like a team full of fullbacks and 2 halfbacks that are kicking the ball in the air, and we just have no other ways of scoring other than just kicking the ball in the air. And then like it caught team napping. Certainly the first Six Nations we won, it did just work on everyone, and they were all just like boggled. And now every time they play Ireland, you're having to pick your high ball options at wing and stuff. They're trying to nullify that. We just haven't really evolved with that. It was ever since Brian Driscoll retired, we were giving leeway to have Jared Payne in the centre with Henshaw. It wasn't really gelling, but it worked defensively, so we were sticking with that. It was all just very tactically, like, you can't really fault the logic that he's following. Unambitious. Other than to say unambitious, that's what I know. Like logically speaking, yes, you're not wrong. You make cogent arguments for having these players here, and that's probably a good thing. But just have to demand a little bit more. Like, the coach can plan all that you want, and I'm sure Hansen plans all that he wants and gets very meticulous over his plans. But he still wants to see Mackenzie make a savage play midway through the half. He's not regimenting for. He wants to see it happen.
Yes.
Like, and just giving, like we're talking about, giving your players up freedom to play. Like, Joe Schmidt's Ireland don't seem to have that much freedom to play beyond certain templates, certain manoeuvres that are already discussed, and it's very do your job, it's very linear and pointed things.
Doesn't seem to. First of all, they don't have freedom. That's true. Henshaw looks a pale shadow of what he looks in Leinster when he puts on a green jersey. But he also doesn't pick the guys who make the plays. That's the other thing. Tiernan O'Halloran's and Joey Carberry's and these guys. And Carberry's in the squad. I'd love to see him at fullback. I'd love to be proved wrong, just like I was proven wrong in the second and third test of the Lions. I said that about the Lions team. I said, like, this is a great team can be picked from this squad, but it won't be. And they'll pick the wrong team, and they'll pick.
And initially they did.
But
got schooled.
They picked the right team, and the right team won. So hopefully, we'll see. They don't have to get schooled, and Joe will make the right call. But there's questions there. The other question is why John Cooney isn't in at 9, and why we're sticking with Luke McGrath and Kieran Marmion as understudies to Murray. It's a bit of a pernickety one, but Cooney to me looks like he could make the step to world class, to test level rugby, where neither of the other two look that capable of doing. So I assume he'll go with Luke McGrath because of that defensive nous, and he's a little better with the boot. So it probably won't come back to bite them.
I actually don't think we're that bad in terms of depth at scrum half.
Other than we lose like
Murray is the world class option, and then we have 2 others that are very good elite options as well.
I don't know if they're elite.
I think you're a little harsh on Luke McGrath sometimes. I think Luke McGrath is growing into a version. He's also only like 24, which is like, I value his role as understudy to Murray, because I think he can get better. I think he needs to get a little bit more tempo, focus on tempo in his attack. But his defence is sound, and his kicking is sound, and it's just
kicking is soundish.
His temperament is also good. I like his judgment sometimes.
I don't think he's ever going to be a world class 9.
We'll see. Remains to be seen.
Yeah.
He is going to remain our 9 from a Leinster point of view, and more power to him. I kind of, as much as it annoyed, like watching the Ulster game when Gibson Park started, I can see some of the reasons now why Luke McGrath starts, because we were a little bit too frenetic sometimes. We were a little bit too quick for our own good sometimes, and the pack weren't quite reading what Gibson Park was doing as much as they do with Luke McGrath. So I kind of value the steadiness that he gives him. I also just value the mixing up of it. I like having a stylistic change when you sub your 9. So I think that shakes up a game.
But if you take Murray off Luke McGrath, what happens? You have a worse version of Murray on the pitch, a much worse version of Murray on the pitch.
You keep things going, I suppose.
Marmion is a stylistic change from Murray.
Marmion is, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I don't know. It remains to be seen. I don't know who's going to pick. I'm just questioning everything. I think it's one of those things I feel like I can, like, certainly when South Africa are playing, or I'm watching South Africa, I feel like I know exactly what's going to be picked, who's going to be picked and all this. It's only with Ireland, and maybe it's just that I'm a little too close to it, that I can never tell with Joe what's going on. What's he seeing that I'm not seeing? Because he surely is something he isn't. Like, I'm an armchair fan here, so like I know I'm in deference to his wisdom on it, but Rob Kearney, what's he doing there? Why? Because is he going to the World Cup? Is that what it is? Is he going to captain us next World Cup? Is that the plan? Why is he there?
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense to me. And to be honest, I the squad gets a 5 out of 10 for me. We'll see. It's another we'll see. Like, it is just a squad. I'm looking forward to the rest of the November internationals. This week there are a couple of games. The Barbarians playing New Zealand. I was very disappointed in the Baba squad. There's no Northern Hemisphere players in there at all. We just seem determined to not give them a challenge from the North this year, ever since the Lions tour where the North got the win against them. It's a draw. It's a team full of Kiwis who couldn't make the squad. It's just, I don't really get it. They're going to play at Twickenham. The fans are going to be a little bit alienated because they're not going to have anyone to cheer for. It's a bunch of Super Rugby players. As much as it'll be an entertaining game, but the All Blacks will win it by 50. And there's no real sense to that. The All Blacks, the Wallabies even are going to go and play Japan this week. That's the only other fully fledged test match.
It's good as well. I'm curious, like Japan have a lot to play for, or just they
seem to have dipped. It's a very real shame we can't get a proper Pacific Nations Cup going anymore. I don't know what happened there. If the money fell through, maybe all this South African World Cup money that they're going to make will fund some going forward.
Oh, and here we go. Ding ding, ding ding. You know what that bell means? That bell means we need to stop talking about the international window for a time because Daragh has something to say.
No, well,
we're going to get there. We'll get there now because it's a perfect segue. You're talking about like why is there no Pacific Nations Cup? Maybe it's because money talks and like they're still investing in Japan.
Maybe it's because they just don't care to spend the money where they should be spending the money. Because it's not a profit organisation.
But you say they should spend the money there because that'll grow the game. That's fine. They, whoever they may be, say we know, but we should spend the money here because we'll make more money back.
Yeah, well, for a non-profit organisation, a lot of their decisions are increasingly corporate. Yes.
And it's the one that's vexing
us it's not like they don't have the money. I'm sorry, but this is an absolute tangent. But it's about the Pacific Nations Cup. But it seems to me that like they're setting up all these massive events in the USA to tap the US market.
Yeah.
Some developing nations are more important than others. If you're the USA or Japan, we'll throw World Cups at you. We'll throw everything at you because you got the money to return with interest. If you're Georgia or Fiji, Samoa or Tonga,
we'll just leave you.
You're on your own. You're on your own. You have to organise it from the grassroots. Have just all of those countries incredible grassroots support for the game. We're not going to do shit for you. You're not going to get games against the All Blacks. You're not going to get big games against the top tier because you don't have the money because you're not as profitable for us. And it feels everything that they say about the reasons that they're doing what they're doing. This is where I'm going to segue into this World Cup report that came out and have a different take on it than everybody who's blaming the IRFU and blaming Ireland for what happened.
It's not their fault at all. It seems the powers that be have deemed.
But everything that they say, and I read through this report, everything that they say feels disingenuous to me and feels
dishonest. They're lying.
Yeah, like it just feels like excuses. Like it's like I read through this because I was like, where are Ireland going short? This is, by the way, I have to frame this because there's some people who don't know what we're talking about. Is that there was a report for the Rugby World Cup hosting in 2023.
And the countries bidding for it are
the two worst unions in world rugby, objectively, and Ireland. That was France, South Africa, and Ireland. And we're all bidding for the World Cup, and they did a report on. Basically a report that would give a recommendation to the board for who to vote for who gets the World Cup. And they ranked it, they graded it on vision and hosting concept, tournament organisation and schedule, venues and host cities, tournament infrastructure, finance, commerce and commitments. Those were their grades. It's just words. Okay? And then
finance, commerce, and commitments.
Oh yeah, that was
what's commitments?
That was worth 35%.
We have commitments, sure. Commitments are Irish.
Yeah, there you go. Commitments are a soul band in the 90s in Ireland. But no, listen, they graded it and they graded Ireland in last place. All of them in the 70th percentile. Again, just numbers. Ireland got 72% in the executive summary and the comparative scores, but France got 75, and South Africa got 78, so they win. So I looked where we came short. Like I took a look through because I was amazed. I was like, oh shit, we've lost the World Cup. Oh god, this is the thing we were looking forward to having. And when I look at it, we came up really, really short in some key areas. We didn't have the information technology. They were very disappointed that even though we didn't have the information technology necessary for some stadiums, that even though we have dozens of internationally huge tech companies, many of whom have voiced their openness and willingness to invest in this World Cup, we haven't made a deal yet. So we lost points on that. So we obviously can't host the World Cup because of that. And the other thing was the stadiums. Some of them still had terraced seating. First of all, I don't see the problem with some terraced seating. And this is what the RFU were making the point. It's like, we're not an impoverished country. It's no bones on us to put seats on terraced seating. It's not like we've 6 years. This is something that would take months to put seats on.
For terraces, all it can take.
But like the point that the RFU were making to them was like, why can't we have 5% terrace seating? And they're saying they want all Tier 1 and all knockout stage games to have no terrace seating.
They just won't host it in those stadiums.
Well, no, this is the thing, that they wanted not to do that, but Porky Gueve was the big stadium of contention. It's no issue putting seats on stadiums. But generally speaking, apart from this snark, my point is that this whole report is about infrastructure. And essentially, there's some other jargon in there, like about the quality of the bid. And like in Ireland lost 5 points on not being comprehensive enough in some. Like it was so vague. It was such an awful read because it was just absolute word salads everywhere and no clear cut like explanation. Once you finally pitch your way through, it's like, oh, this is the specific area that Ireland lost a point against France on, and I was like, the report wasn't comprehensive enough. What does that have to do with hosting a tournament? And like, my point is that this whole thing is about infrastructure. Every ounce of it is about infrastructure, seemingly. On face value, we'll get into what I think the real motivations are here in a second. But the whole thing is about infrastructure. All of these countries have great infrastructure. Like, these are 3 first world countries we're talking about here. This is not Qatar. Ireland is not Qatar. Nobody is going to have an infrastructure issue holding a World Cup here. You were disingenuous to suggest otherwise. The fact that South Africa are a little bit ahead on the comprehensiveness of their information technology plan is not the pillar on which your bid should hinge, really. And anyone with common sense can see that Ireland will have enough. Obviously, look, we're Irish. We're biased.
That's why the passion involved.
Well, it really does piss me off because there's so much wrong with what France and South Africa are doing. To see them, one of them is going to be rewarded now, probably South Africa. The mind boggles. But what wasn't taken, what bothers me is what wasn't taken into account. Like, whatever about infrastructure, like, it's just a base level in which Ireland don't have a problem. Like, you're not going to have a problem with accommodation, you're not going to have a problem with transport. We will sort it out. We are a first world nation. You're not going to have a problem with plumbing. You're not going to have an issue in Brazil, like in Brazil with the Rio Olympics, where the athletes are unsafe. You're not going to feel unsafe. You're not going to feel any of this. So the idea that it should all hinge on these infrastructure-based criteria is laughable. Now the reasons that most people, and there were a lot of neutral polls taken that favoured Ireland, whether it's taken in New Zealand or taken in Australia or taken anywhere else, the UK, most people voted for Ireland for why they should get it. And their reasons were not on the criteria. Like, it's not what the fact, the quality of the fans, not weighted. The quality of the team, not weighted. The fact that France and South Africa hosted it before, not a factor. Like, the fact that half of Paris, or more than half of Paris, will either not know or care that there's a World Cup going on in their country as it's going on, not a factor. You know,
the fact that if it's in South Africa, half of the, yes, they have massive stadia, half of them will be empty for more than half of the games.
Empty seats will happen. Bad atmosphere will happen. Venezuela's will happen.
Venezuela's will rear their ugly again, yes.
All of this will happen. The quality of the Irish fans. Every reason that a neutral would give you for why Ireland should have a chance to host a World Cup would be perfect. And the infrastructure, it's so disingenuous to pretend that you have infrastructure concerns when you have a nation like Ireland, a wealthy nation like Ireland, the same size as New Zealand, with the same amount of stadiums and the same quality of stadiums that New Zealand have.
And that are now finally, like whatever about before, when maybe we haven't backed it up on the pitch, like now correct me if I'm wrong, we're the third ranked team in the world now, are we? Or maybe we've dropped to fourth.
I imagine the Australians have taken us.
But we were third for most of the year, we're fourth, like we're one of the elite teams in
fifth.
Are we fifth now?
Because New Zealand, England, Australia, South Africa.
South Africa, I thought they dropped down low. Maybe this is it, they've been collecting points all summer.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but we're like one of these elite teams. We're also the last of those two involved, we're the last ones to beat the All Blacks.
The other thing that's not taken into account, I'm sorry to interrupt.
The other
thing that's not taken into account is just how craven both of these unions are in very different ways. The FFR have been just utterly castrated by the LNR, the club union in France. They have robbed the Australians and now the All Blacks, obviously with our recruitment and many other
nations, and
South Africa of their best players. They're plundering the world's talent from them in order to subsidise
none of
this
their own
appalling league of theirs, this objectively terrible league of theirs that is jacked full of unfit superstars wasting away when they should be playing international rugby. Not a factor, not considered.
Well, I think it is a factor, but it's just those aren't their priorities. Like the top of tours is also responsible for growing the global economy or the global economic standing.
Nobody's watching it. Nobody outside of France is watching it. Nobody is.
We are sometimes.
Not that much. I would prefer to watch the Pro 14 in the Premiership any day. It's the worst league in Europe. There's no question. We watched the final last year. It was painful.
It was, yes.
It's an awful league. What they're doing to global superstars, what Morad Bouchalal is doing, is appalling and goes consistently unchecked. And it's another example of how there's just no real moral compass going on in world rugby. And this is something that's slowly creeping in over time. How they're developing the game, who they're letting, who they're snubbing, and who they're not snubbing. And then South Africans, we have this whole issue with their ANC, their corrupt, terrible government imposing horrendous rules that are castrating their Springbok team, that are racist rules, that are not allowing the best players to flourish, that are inherently going to cause division, and those are going to come into effect fully by 2019. We don't know what state the Springboks are going to be in by 2023, not taken into account. So many human factors that rugby fans can see and point out, not taken into account, and pernickety things over infrastructure in 3 countries with perfect, well-suitable infrastructure for hosting the tournament.
Yeah, it's not like the Rio Olympics where they have to build a load of stuff, scramble and invest.
We don't have Qatari slaves to build stadiums in time for the World Cup. But that's what it hinges on. Is madness. It doesn't hinge on any of the human factors. And what we're going to end up doing is rewarding a country that is doing things wrong in whoever gets it, France or South Africa. And again, I'm Irish. I'm certainly bitter at the news, and I think you can sense that in the tone. But that doesn't mean I'm wrong. I promise.
Feel free to comment below and let us know what you think about it, because this is just purely a very, very Irish parochial thing. One thing that I was talking about that, in terms of a progression over ever since the professional era, which country has embraced professional rugby more and moved on with
which country has done more right direction than Ireland? Yeah. And when have Ireland ever failed at hosting an event? We've been part of World Cups in the past. When have we ever failed? What leads you to believe that we can't host events? What evidence have you? But no, they're all fine. And this is something that, to be fair to them, they did say in the report, that all 3 of them could host a report. But no, it's 76% South Africa, 72% Ireland. So no World Cup for you. It's madness. And I promise you, I obviously you have to take this with faith. You don't know me, but I promise you, if this had gone to Italy, if Italy had launched a bid and Italy had outbeat Ireland, and they had given it to Italy, I'd be like, you really can't argue. It's the same. They've never had a World Cup. This is an emerging nation. They're starting to really show signs of doing something on this level. This could be.
I would still be slightly vexed.
This could be a great thing. This could be a great thing for Italy.
Yeah.
I would get it.
Yes.
If it was the USA, I'd get it. If it was Argentina, I'd get it. If it was, I don't know, Georgia, that'd be mad. Georgia probably couldn't do it. But
they wouldn't do well on that report, would Georgia?
No, they wouldn't. But if it was one of Italy and Argentina who had originally made bids before dropping out, if it was one of those 2, I wouldn't have a problem. But France and South Africa are, without question, the 2 most cancerous established rugby unions in the sport, not getting called out on it for ridiculous things that they're doing. And one more point that I just want to make, which was at the beginning of the report that I read, which I thought was very interesting, was how the report commented on the sort of blandness of the South African bid, in that it was just very simply, very straightforward. The sales pitch was low investment, high turnover. That was the bid. We don't need to invest anything. We have our stadiums. We have everything. We're going to get huge gate sales. We're going to get huge people in. You're going to get a chunk of the returns. This is a for-profit venture, and they have gotten the infrastructure-based recommendation after giving that sales pitch. So,
money talks.
I think money talks.
Yeah, sure. That's true. We went through this as well. We did the same. Like, oh, we're such the earnest, like, rose-tinted glasses of your average rugby fan. Like we were talking about. Of course, the Western Force can't get cut. Of course not.
Yeah, because we were seeing it from a rugby perspective, but from the ARU's perspective, there was a privately owned portion of the Melbourne Rebels. Therefore, it was more of a bitch to cut. There were contract issues at stake. We'll just cut the Force. Because rugby isn't the basis for the decision that's being made. It's not. It's money. It's money is the basis for the decisions being made in Ireland. In my view, as opposed to the IRFU doing a terrible job, and this is what the narrative, because everybody in Ireland loves to self-hate.
Yes.
The narrative that has emerged this morning after hearing that Ireland finished last in the report is that Irish infrastructure is terrible, the Irish bid was terrible, everybody, Shane Ross needs to be, taken to task. They all need to be taken to task. This narrative has emerged. I don't buy a word of it. I don't buy any of it. I think that the onus was on World Rugby to make this call for us. We always knew that we had the infrastructure to do it. We still know we have the infrastructure to do it. We also always knew we were a small nation. Look, we're not going to stack up against France infrastructure wise. It's a huge, rich, one of the richest nations in the world with a population of north of 80 million, I think. It's like you're just not going to match up as a 4 million strong population. But New Zealand pulled off a great World Cup.
Yeah.
Ireland would do the same. And your decision for picking France is disingenuous. Suggesting that Irish infrastructure won't hold up is disingenuous. So it's the criteria is the problem. It's the criteria for judging this that's the problem. I'm not saying that France don't have better infrastructure. I'm just saying that having that be the basis of your decision when you're against Ireland, there's nobody in the whatever the percentages even mean. There's nobody in the 25% here. 72 to 78 is the margin, and that's what's going to decide this. And I think that's a huge mistake. Yeah. So I'm done. Rant over.
There we go. We got through. We were discussing that before because the news only broke earlier on today. So I was like, how are we going to shoehorn that into the podcast? You wanted to lead with it.
I did.
But I was very much of the opinion that just a tirade to welcome everyone back to the podcast would not be the most prudent. So now we got warmed up, got a bit of fire, and we got that out there. So
right.
Please actually do comment down below and let us know.
Let me know if it'll be on the reservation, because I want to know. But these are 100% my earnest feelings on the matter. And obviously I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that I wouldn't be reacting this way if it was Italy or France, or if I just didn't get this pit in my stomach of disingenuity from World Rugby, which I always get. Just this pit in my stomach that says they're lying to you. They're lying to you, Daragh. They're not this is not the reason. Yeah.
Well, that's what happens. You read a headline nowadays, and you just have to sift through and try and comb through what they actually mean. It's always the way with it, and it's reeks of cronyism and nonsense. So we'll kind of stop seething now and return to more rugby-based matters.
Well, this is because
we don't money doesn't talk on this podcast. We're not making money from this. This is just sheer rugby stuff that we want to talk about.
It's true.
And so we did interrupt our lovely salivating at the thoughts of some of the great November internationals that we have, and like we want to be a bit more bitchy still. Like New Zealand we don't get to play New Zealand, or England don't get to play New Zealand too.
And another thing, why not? Why do we play New Zealand once every 3 years? Stop shafting us, World Rugby. Stop. All right, now listen. But I want to leave us. I've done a lot of talking in this podcast, so I'm going to let you lead off with this. But I'm just going to introduce it. It's something I wrote down. It's just a thought to leave you with, and we touched on it so much during this podcast that I think a little conversation on it before we wrap up wouldn't go astray, because it's the idea that so that there isn't an emerging successful style right now. So much so as we might have thought as we were beginning the podcast that there's a philosophy that is emerging, and the Chiefs philosophy, the Scotland philosophy, that might be the way to play the game. But as this season is kicking into gear, there's so many different approaches that the top coaches are taking, and there's so many different stylistic battles that are just very, very interesting to see. And it's very, very interesting to see what coaches put their emphasis where. So you talk about where we've been really gung-ho since we started hosting this podcast is like we've been in the Pat Lam, Gregor Townsend, Dave Rennie camp, and that's the idea of giving players the ability to play the game, having everybody be a ball player, having everybody thinking, let's find the space, let's find the space, let's find the space, where do we attack, how do we find the space, where's the try coming from, and every player be able to execute it, working on skills and working on mental skills. Everybody's a playmaker, everybody's a thinker, and we're gonna find space and get guys into the game. A hallmark of what those guys have been doing, hallmark of what the Chiefs do, hallmark of what Glasgow do. Hopefully we'll see Scotland doing it with Gregor Townsend, and what Connacht did under Pat Lam. Other coaches like Michael Cheika, again, not conservative, but much more discipline based. Like discipline isn't a high factor for Tens. Obviously not giving away penalties is, but in terms of making sure your players are always in the right position, always in this structure, always doing this. That's Cheika's thing. Cheika always wants his players to be 100% disciplined, 100% sticking to the system, sticking to each other. Other guys, Mark McCall, one of the big players now with Saracens going so well. We've talked so much about that Saracens template, and then you have Steve Hansen, who is somewhere in between. We've talked about his frailties and his strengths and the interesting things that he has to go through. And I just want, like, again, there's no real cogent bringing together of those thoughts, but I just wanted to see if you have any musings on that.
I very much am of that opinion. Like we did start this podcast, and I questioned it's called the overlap. We were also thinking well, maybe find space, because that was certainly our mantra for the first few podcasts and stuff, and that was very much the teams that we were enjoying watching. It was during this year's Super Rugby, we were like questioning the Crusaders even as they were unbeaten. We were kind of going like it's a bit too steamroller, like not very All Blacky. Love to see more of the Chiefs running the ball around. We've also seen those two teams play and the Crusaders get the better of it, so it's like, where does that leave you in terms of how you rationalise this? There's always like stylistic matchups are what we're getting to see more and more of, certainly in the new Champions Cup. And there's always a style that nullifies the other, and there are human factors as well. Like sometimes your big players don't show up. Sometimes like Sia Khaleesi doesn't have a big game, and then what do you do, or whatever it may be. But
there's another aspect of coaching though, isn't it? Like Cheika doesn't seem to have those days anymore.
No, he doesn't.
He gets his players playing.
No, he doesn't. But then, like, there's I think there was also, I think it was Anthony Watson, or maybe it was Jack Noel, who was talking about watching the New Zealand conferences and watching the All Blacks sometimes play, and just kind of envying them because he's a winger, and he's like looking at it going like they tried something there, and then Sevilla steps out and throws a flick pass, but it doesn't go in and it goes straight into touch or something, or they fumble and knock on. And he's making the point like, if this was a few years ago and I did that, I'd never play for England again. Whereas in New Zealand, it's just next play. Because the thing that, like, in team coaching tickets, it's less so with Eddie Jones now, because he does want them playing rugby, but like certainly Joe Schmidt's Ireland are a bit guilty of it as well, like really focusing on the mistakes and minimising them as a first way of getting of implementing your game plan and painting your picture of establishing your winning conditions. Whereas in New Zealand, it's like you're giving it, with those Dave Rennie style coaching, you're giving them the tools to play, you're allowing them to embrace opportunism and trying to go for it, which makes more mistakes.
Rather than being like we'll make less mistakes, we'll create more opportunities.
Yeah.
So we create 6 or 7 opportunities and finish 4 of them. Joe Schmidt might be talking about the 3 errors. Dave Rennie might be thinking about his 4 tries. You know.
It's just differences of philosophy. I don't know if there's a right or wrong, but I do know that there's a balance to be found, and part of it is knowing your players. So like it's more interesting to look at things that don't work, because these are all like when Dave Rennie turn up at Glasgow, there's not much change there. Like the philosophy's already established. I think it's quite a neat introduction to him. But when you have, we've mentioned it before, but Rob Penny at Munster, a great example of just neither is wrong, Like Rob Penny tried to establish some of these New Zealand fundamentals, had his second rows out in the wing, where Munster's second rows had never been before in or since. Like they just don't feel they belong there, don't feel that's in the spirit of the game. They're like, but now this way the pack's all the way over there, and like where's the like it's just like the players don't buy into it, therefore it's not going to be effective. It's also just clashing with the style that's already just the tradition that's there at the club. I think there are intangibles like that have to be respected. And that's one of the great things we're talking about Czechia and this Aussie team, like as organised and regimented and disciplined as he is. I mean, we know as Leinster fans how like Jackman spoke not too highly of him. Like he has a coaching style that's very abrasive and demanding and loud, and it's going to rub some people the wrong way. But for a team like Australia, who we were thinking of before Czechia took over as just these flaky, talented, super talented, very dangerous challenge for any team who's going to try and mount a run in a tournament.
Yeah.
But a challenge that you should just deal with.
Basically a team that embodied the personality of Quade Cooper.
Yes. Essentially flipping and turning and doing some stellar things that you think no other team in rugby can do. And you look at those highlight reels and you're like, how are these not the best team in the world? And then you just watch some games and you're like, okay, right. Whereas he's been a perfect addition to that, because what he's focused them on is like not sacrificing any of that flair and encouraging them to go for it, and picking players like Curtly Beale and Israel Folau who are going to facilitate their going for it. But establishing routine and systems such that they're not goofing up on their own kick receptions or kick-off receptions, exiting efficiently, doing line-outs very efficiently, doing mauls very efficiently, doing scrums efficiently, even though they feel they may not be the strongest scrummagers in the world. Get parity and get it out of there and be quick about it. And
everything they do is efficient. And in other words, I guess one of the things that you could say is that whether you're looking at Mark McCall's templates or Czech's rudimentary disciplinary football, well, what I would say is that every one of them, their team has an ethos and buys into it and believes in it.
That's it. That's what I mean. Like a coach has to have a vision for the team and where it's going. Which is what impressed me about Conor O'Shea with Italy as well. And now I think his presence there is part of what we've seen in the resurgence in the Italian clubs. I think he has gone down. I think he's tried to instill a bit of like, here we're playing rugby here. Let's try and play a bit of rugby. Because for too long those Treviso teams in some of those games, like it just looks like a bunch of athletes they rounded up and put in jerseys and told them to go and have at it. They didn't know what they were doing. So whereas now what they're focusing on a bit more is like catch pass. It seems like they're working the fundamentals, trying to get them embrace a love for finding the space, which is good to see.
Just a little bit more of a don't sweat the small stuff kind of attitude. You know, like don't let the fact that you've shipped 3 tries in 20 minutes stop you from playing the game.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it after why it's disappointing, but for right now, next play.
Which is something you can always admire in a Fiji team. You made that point before that they'll be 50 points to nil down against the All Blacks or Australia, and it won't be. They'll be like, try. It's like space,
and they'll find the try. And then bench like, you go boys. It's like we should have been more competitive in this, but we like the try that we scored.
Indeed,
you know.
And there's less value, less stock placed on that. Certainly in the Northern Hemisphere, like the Six Nations is a very like attritional winner takes all kind of mold, where it brings out the more functional rugby in most teams.
This is the thought.
It makes for slightly less attractive spectacle.
We talk about we never really approached an answer because these are all examples. These are all examples of mentalities that are working. But all the things that you talked about, team ethos, team discipline, players buying into it, like all of that was embodied by Joe Schmidt's Ireland right up to the quarterfinals. So they had the team ethos, they had the vision for the team, and it was wrong. It got beat.
I don't know about that. I think the fatal mistake they had was they defended only one way.
I disagree.
Only one way.
I disagree.
And it was like literally in terms of style. You're talking about stylistic matchups. An Argentina team with pacey wingers who attack exclusively in the wide channels versus a reverse drift that sacrifices space, and in those wide channels never going to add up. It was what you were alluding to all about Cup.
I think what they were doing was wrong in attack. I think what they were doing wrong was wrong in defence. I think everything about what they were doing was wrong. They were leaning too much on the halfbacks. They were leaning too much on up and unders. And as much as they bought into it, it was wrong. It was wrong because you have to find ways to score tries to win World Cups, and that wasn't a philosophy that lended itself to it. So I think as much as it's great to see all these teams succeeding, I think it's going to be greater still to see some of them play each other.
Mm-hmm.
And we are going to get answers
We are.
to what is the most efficient
one
way
of
to
the
find tries.
things that the efficiency in finding tries is a priority, and the notion of a killer pass is there, a scoring pass, and it's something that's ignored a bit more in the northern hemisphere than the southern hemisphere.
Not so much no more.
Less so now. Yeah, that's what I mean. But it's like people are starting to buy into it. Certainly Scotland's addition to last year's tournament in the Six Nations, and even the year before, they were the most efficient attack in, and it was something that Shaggy kept saying. Oh, it was so funny to watch some of the punditry, like Shaggy would be saying something
Shane
Horgan, Shaggy would be saying something like, well, Scotland are the best attack in the tournament at the Six Nations at the moment. They look like the best attack, and then like all the elder gruff punters in RTE would also go like, no, Scotland aren't good. No, they're not good. Not as good as England or Ireland or Wales. They'll play against Italy. And it's just like, where is your head? Because you're not watching the fucking games. And that's like Shane Horgan illustrating the point, like, it's not as bad a result as all that. Win the doom and gloom and losing it. Like, Scotland found killer passes. Like, certainly the manner in which they scored their tries would be more, like, certainly prettier, but it also speaks to an urgency to find tries. That's what I want to see more of across the board. I think there's scope to include that in all of these philosophies. So like we were talking about criticising Munster in their performance against Saris, and it was like part of their old school philosophy that they were happy with where they were at half time.
It was like 9-3, 6 down,
3-point game, and they were trying to, like, they didn't recognise that they needed to score those tries.
Well, it was a body by Donnacha O'Callaghan at half time. His analysis, and Donnacha O'Callaghan, old school Munster man, now doing punditry.
He's still doing
he's not a punter. He was doing punditry in that context.
Yes.
He is retiring at the end of this year.
Right.
Don't mean to disparage you.
No, I like Donnacha, and actually he's decent.
He's becoming a much better pundit, but what he was saying at the time is like, this just has the feel of one of those games that's going to go down to one wire. It's just a game with 3 pointers. And I was like, no, Donnacha. Saracens are going to find tries. You had a lot of ball in their half, and you didn't find scores, and there was no that sense of panic, that light switch didn't click. And I suppose we're going to see what teams and what coaches recognise that, and if they all recognise it, we might get a chance to see what systems are most efficient at finding it. So I think going forward, there are great stylistic matches to come in both international and club rugby, and I think it's going to be a great season and probably a great 2 to 3 years running right up to the World Cup that are going to teach us a lot about the game. And I think that what we are witnessing, especially with Saracens, but with other teams as well, like with Australia, it's next levels of discipline. What I'm seeing this year from them, it's the manner in which those players are acquitting themselves is next level. And with Saracens, the shape of their attack is next level. And I feel like with some of those coaches who I brought up, we're getting glimpses into the future of what rugby's going to look like, professional rugby at the highest level. And it's very exciting.
It is very exciting.
And it's a positive note to leave us on.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm just hoping that this November shows a slight win, because the Japan tour showed that, but I hope that Joe is a bit more malleable to it, embraces the ideas of attacking weapons in the wings and finding tries when we need them.
Yeah.
I don't like looking at us pound away and have CJ carry, and 10 minutes later it's a 7-pointer or a 5-pointer.
Yeah.
It's like bullshit. I want us to be striking, which we were in Japan. So yeah, we'll see which coach learns, we'll see which team does what, where they're all going, and it's all World Cup prep.
Yeah. We're all looking forward to a cracking 2023 World Cup in South Africa.
Alright. We'll leave it there. We'll definitely leave it there. We've just ticked over 2 hours or thereabouts, so that's plenty long enough, and the family won't thank us for chatting away this late at night. But so we'll probably talk to you soon after 1 or 2 of these international games. We'll have a bit more to look back on then.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we're back next week, but we'll see what happens.
Cool. Alright, see you later, guys. Bye. You gonna go?
Oh,
Nailed it.
nailed something.